But while there might already be a truly great Terminator game in some alternate universe's timeline, in this one the wait continues.
Well, it's a good thing I stopped trusting Australian people a long time ago then. What? I knew it! What kind of sick people would lie about having a country?
I need you to listen very...
So I recently completed Terminator Resistance, the new game from legendary developers Teon. Who are Teon, I hear you ask? That answer your question? I should say right off the bat that I was expecting fuck all from this game. I only bought it because I'm a huge fan of the first two Terminator movies, and because I had no interest in either Death Stranding or Star Wars. That's right, I bought Terminator Resistance instead of either of these games. Why did I decide to do that, I hear you ask?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
The trailers for Terminator Resistance were massively disliked by many people, with complaints mostly revolving around how dated the graphics looked. Well, after completing the game, I'm here to tell you that the graphics in Terminator Resistance aren't that bad. They're really fucking bad. What kind of sick monster would design a tree like that? But you know what? The graphics may suck, but at least Terminator Resistance is a complete game, with no microtransactions, or loot boxes, or season passes. You get the full experience on the disc, and how many other games can you say that about these days? Terminator Resistance may look dated, but it's also one of the most enjoyable gaming experiences I've had this year. If you're a fan of the Terminator franchise, you owe it to yourself to play this game. You also owe it to yourself to subscribe to this channel. Who said that? Terminator Resistance is unique in that it's the first time we get to properly see the future war that was briefly shown to us in Terminator 1 and 2. And let me tell you, the developers nailed the look and atmosphere of this world. At times, it honestly feels like you're playing through various scenes shown in the films. It's incredible. The world in Terminator Resistance is empty and desolate, yet still has a certain beauty to it. Exploring certain areas brought back memories of playing through Fallout 3 for the first time, and there are even several references to the first two films for people who are willing to take the time to look for them. Remember this guy?
Guard it for me, Big Benz.
What are you doing here, boy? I know a kid that'd take care of you. Come on.
Now, what should I call him?
What's the dog's name?
Max. Hey, Janelle. What's wrong with Wolfie? I can hear him barking. Is he okay?
Wolfie's fine, honey. Wolfie's just fine.
The story in Terminator Resistance is also very interesting and kept me far more engaged than any of the recent films. In the game you play as Jacob Rivers, an everyday soldier who soon finds himself in great danger when a Terminator is sent to kill him. Over the course of the game, Jacob will befriend other survivors, and your choices in the game will decide whether some of these characters live or die. Also, being extra nice to some of the female characters might result in you getting to have super awkward sex with them. Please stop. Can I mash the buttons or something to come quicker? Anything so I don't have to watch any more of this shit. I'm shocked to say that I loved nearly every character in this game. They all have fleshed out personalities, and some of them have fascinating backstories that I was more than happy to take the time to listen to. A lot of the older characters were also alive back when Judgment Day arrived, and it was weirdly fascinating getting to hear stories of how they managed to survive the end of the world, even if some of them came across as a bit far-fetched sometimes. There are even some old familiar faces who make an appearance in the game, but I won't spoil who they are here. So the world is fascinating, the characters are likeable, and the story is interesting. So far so good, right? But now it's time to talk about the most important aspect of the game. The music. So how is the soundtrack in this game? Well, you'll be happy to hear that it's excellent, but that's mainly due to the fact that the game's soundtrack is mostly composed of music from the first two films, albeit slightly remixed versions of said music. It still works really well, however, and blasting away at T-800s while Brad Fiedel's epic score plays in the background was a pretty amazing experience for a Terminator fan like myself. But now it's finally time to talk about the gameplay, and I've been dreading this part of the review, because there's a lot to talk about. On the surface, Terminator Resistance might look like your typical everyday first-person shooter, but the further into the game you get, the more it reveals its true depth to you. For one thing, the game doesn't solely revolve around shooting metal robots the entire time. You also need to explore the game's various environments for supplies and loot if you're going to survive. And the maps are huge in Terminator Resistance. You could easily spend a good hour or two exploring some of these areas and still not find everything worth collecting. Exploring deserted buildings for loot is surprisingly addictive, and there are many hidden areas to find if you're willing to tread off the beaten track. Finding supplies in the world is vital because they allow you to craft various different items, ranging from ammo for your guns to medkits and even explosives. Also, you can sell some of your supplies and resources to traders for money, which can then be used to buy weapons, ammo, or healing supplies outright. You can also earn XP in the game by completing side quests, finding hidden areas, or killing enemies. This XP can then be used to level up certain attributes, like allowing you to use lockpicks to unlock doors, or being able to take more damage from enemies. What I like most about this attribute system is how it opens up so many more options to you in the game. For example, every now and again you'll stumble across these sentry turrets out in the world. During the first few hours of the game, it's best practice to either avoid these things or destroy them outright. However, once you level up your hacking ability, you'll be able to hack into these turrets and use them to your advantage to take out any enemies around you. Also, the hacking minigame is Frogger. How cool is that? Actually, not very cool at all now that I think about it. I'm sorry, I don't know where I was going with that. Level design is also excellent for the most part. It actually reminds me a lot of Deus Ex with the amount of options you have open to you. Take this area for example. You're tasked with getting inside this building, but the door is locked. If you have any pipe bombs on you, you can use one to destroy this wall. If you don't have any pipe bombs, however, you can also use this truck instead to get you up, so that you can enter through this hole on the second floor. Sometimes if there's a locked door but you don't have any remaining lockpicks, you might be able to find another way through if you look around. It's little touches like this that really make exploring the game's world a pleasure. As I mentioned earlier, you'll come across many different characters during the game, and depending on your actions, some of these characters may die before the end. To have any hope of saving these people, they need to first be able to trust you. You can gain a character's trust by frequently speaking with them and choosing the right response to their questions. You can also gain their trust by completing side quests from them. There are dozens of side quests in the game, and many are worth doing, especially if you find the lore of this world interesting. One side quest that involves looking for a woman's husband actually got a genuine emotional response from me once I had completed it. Towards the end of the game, I made a single mistake that cost the lives of two of my favourite characters, and it was genuinely upsetting when I found their dead bodies. I never thought a game developed by Teon of all companies would have been able to evoke such emotions in me. So with all that crap out of the way, I guess it's time to talk about the stuff I didn't like. And since I haven't talked about the combat yet, I'm assuming you can all guess what I thought about it. I loved it! Nah, I'm kidding, it's actually pretty bad. Don't get me wrong though, the combat isn't completely awful. It feels good enough killing robots. The problem mostly revolves around the game's atrocious AI, and the complete lack of any challenge, even on the extreme difficulty setting. Enemies simply don't put up any kind of fight, and are quickly dispatched without much effort. They don't take cover, or flank you. They simply wander out into the open and wait for you to take care of them. If you do take damage, don't worry, you can simply heal up with a medkit. And trust me when I tell you that these medkits are everywhere. I had over 100 in my inventory by the end of the game. There are a wide assortment of guns in Terminator Resistance, but most of them become pretty much useless once you get access to plasma weapons 2 hours into the campaign. Also, don't worry about running out of ammunition, it's pretty much impossible to do. I never once ran out of ammo for any of my guns during the entire campaign, which meant I was always using the most powerful weapons in the game without ever worrying about having to conserve ammunition for later. This wouldn't be so much of an issue if it didn't make everything surrounding the combat feel so redundant. I mean, why am I bothering exploring this massive wasteland for ammunition when I already have over 1000 bullets for my plasma rifle? Why am I collecting money to buy healing items when I already have enough medkits to get me through 10 playthroughs? I'm not lying when I say that Terminator Resistance is one of the most laughably easy games I've ever played, and if it wasn't for the story, characters and world, I honestly would have stopped playing after the first few hours. Speaking of the first few hours, the game's first 3 or 4 chapters are downright awful. You pretty much shoot nothing else except these spider drone things. The actual Terminators don't even show up for a few hours, and even when they do, you're pretty much forced to sneak past them, because your standard weapons can't damage them. I mean, don't get me wrong, the chapter set in the hospital is one of the game's best, and sneaking past the T-800s is suitably intense. But my point is that the action in Terminator Resistance doesn't really start to pick up pace until you're nearly 3 hours into the game. The combat during the opening chapters is absolutely monotonous, and it only slightly improves later on. I know it sounds like I'm being very critical of the game right now, but that's only because Terminator Resistance comes so close to being a genuinely great game. All that really needs to be tweaked is the difficulty, and it would be a far more rewarding experience. As it is, however, Terminator Resistance is still probably the greatest Terminator game ever made. It's packed full of fan service, it has great characters and an engaging plot. Gameplay is fun, and only the lack of challenge really lets it down. If you're a hardcore Terminator fan, I recommend picking this game up, even at full price. For everyone else, however, you might want to wait for a sale. I have to admit though, I'm genuinely impressed with Teon. When I first heard about Terminator Resistance, I thought it was going to be yet another meme game like Rambo. But for such a small team with a minuscule budget, they really knocked it out of the park, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they go from here. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the review, and if you did, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. It will help me become a real boy. I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.